Well, let's get more now. We can speak to General Joseph Votel, former commander of the U.S. Central Command and a retired four-star general. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Always a pleasure speaking to you, General Votel. I'd like to start by asking for your reaction to the end, or the conclusion, I should say, of these hostilities between Iran and Israel. Does it look to you, first of all, like the ceasefire is holding?
Thank you. It's good to be with you. Yeah, I think it does look like the ceasefire is holding. I know that it was a little bit of a difficult start, but I think the president, certainly our president, has clarified his expectations to both sides here, and so for these last 24 hours, it seems to be holding. You know, with regard to the first part of your question, I mean, I think what has really struck me over the last 12 or 13 days has just been the significant shifts and the surprises that have taken place. You know, first of all, with the strength of the Israeli initial attacks, and then the responses by Iran, and of course the entry into this by the United States on Saturday evening, going after the 3 nuclear sites, and then of course, really just within about 48 hours after that, to be at a place where we were working on a ceasefire. I think it just shows the sweeping changes that are taking place across the Middle East, and certainly in this particular area.
I mean, this was, of course, the deadliest ever confrontation between Israel and Iran. I'd just like to ask you, what was achieved? What were the most important, most significant achievements of these last 12 days?
Well, I think the most important achievement has largely been one that is military, and it has been to really strategically weaken Iran and its capabilities. Iran has built most of their military and security capabilities around long-range standoff weapons, around proxies, and around the nuclear weapons program. So certainly Israel, through their series of strikes, has deeply disrupted their surface-to-air missile launching capability. A lot of those missiles have been expended in retaliation fires, and a large number of those have been shot down. And Israel has largely taken out a lot of their manufacturing process for these types of missiles. So this is, I think, pretty significant. We've seen the impact that they've had on the proxies, particularly Hezbollah, Hamas, and certainly seems that the Iranian militia groups in Iraq and in Syria seem to be deterred, at least for the time being, in terms of taking any action. And then, of course, we know that the object of the activities over the last week has really been the nuclear weapons program that has largely been, I think, set back to some degree. I know there's some debate about how long that is, and we'll have to see what the final assessment is, but I think it's fair to say that there's been significant damage done to that program, and Iran's ability to weaponized enriched uranium and then turn it into something that can be used against Israel or others has been severely set back.
Sure, and we'll talk a bit more about that in just a moment. But I mean, in terms of that US strike in the early hours of Sunday morning local time, I mean, how important, how crucial was that US military involvement in terms of bringing this conclusion to a decisive end? Bringing this conflict, I should say, to a decisive end?
Yeah, I think that it was extraordinarily conclusive and decisive in terms of this. Obviously is a contingency which we have prepared for a long period of time, and frankly, as somebody who's involved in that, as I watched it take place, it was a little bit surreal to do that. But I think what it did, the strength of it, the precision of it, the limited focus of it, directly aimed at the nuclear weapons program, I think sent an unmistakable message to not only Iran, but the rest of the world, that we will not allow this to happen, and that we will not allow a nuclear weapon to be in a position where it can be used as a threat to Israel, to others across the region or globally. So I think it was a decisive aspect, and I think it was kind of the crown on top of what had been a very successful campaign by Israel of reducing Iran's military capabilities over the previous 8 or 9 days.
Do you think there's some frustration in Israel amongst people who would have liked to see Israel go further in terms of achieving more? Because, as you said, there were some victories on the battlefield for the Israelis. There have been a significant number of intelligence victories for the Israelis. Do you think they would have wanted to go further and not be told on Tuesday, as they were by President Trump, that a ceasefire had come into effect and that was that?
Well, that may be the case. I'm sure there are some that within Israel that, excuse me, would have preferred to continue to strike at Iran. But the prime minister, obviously, in talking with the president, reached the conclusion that this was the time to put a ceasefire in place and to hopefully move this into a different medium where we can actually begin to have discussions and negotiations about solidifying this, moving more into the political diplomatic realm. So, yeah, I mean, I think ceasefires are ultimately about compromise. Frankly, not everybody gets everything that they want, and that may be the situation here. But the fact of the matter is, I think for the greater good, the determination was we're ready to move to something else now.
Yeah, I mean, things seem to be panning out more or less as you would have hoped, I think, because when you spoke on Fox News on Friday, you said that if the military option was chosen, which it was, about 12 hours later, it should be accompanied by diplomatic outreach, which seems to be what you're saying now and seems to be what's happening. So you must be watching all of this and thinking, actually, things are panning out exactly as you think they should have done.
Well, yeah, I think that's right. I'm not any kind of prognosticator here in terms of this. I think my experience as a military officer is that there are certain things that military capabilities can do. They can compel people. They can change conditions on the ground. They can deter people. But ultimately, in any confrontation, you have to get to a political discussion. You have to get to a diplomatic resolution of the situation. That's how we solve these problems long term. And the military certainly has an incredible role in that, and so does economics, and so does the power of information. But diplomacy really has to come into its own in all of these situations, really to address the deep underlying issues. And this won't be an easy one. This will be a difficult discussion. It'll take some time, and it will be, again, dissatisfying to some people, but it's the way that we have to move forward, I believe.
Sure. I mean, it's been a tumultuous few days. It's been a tumultuous week, quite frankly, because the week began with that Iranian reprisal attack on the military base in Qatar. President Trump then sort of went down the ceasefire route pretty shortly thereafter. Do you think President Trump was right to shrug that reprisal attack off in the way that he did?
I do. I mean, I don't want to minimize the threat here. I mean, these are 14 ballistic missiles, each carrying about 1,500 pounds of explosives. If they had got through, they could certainly do some damage and cause casualties on the ground. So it's not insignificant. I'm sure the state of Qatar has a view on this as well, since it was into their airspace that these missiles were fired. But I think what the president was looking for, I think, frankly, what Iran was looking for was a way to de-escalate the current cycle of conflict that had taken place. And it appears the United States, along with our Qatari partners, were able to defeat that threat pretty readily. And so, as serious as that might have been, we were able to take care of it, and that provided, I think, a platform for the president to say, okay, let's now move to a different place here. We don't need another retaliatory round of escalation here.
President Trump faced some opposition from people in his own party to doing what America did on Saturday night, Sunday morning. Some Republicans thought that it was a mistake to engage the United States militarily in another faraway conflict. Would you say that, based up until the point we're at now, this has all been a vindication for President Trump?
Well, yeah, I would say that it seems to be going the direction that that is favorable to the United States, and I think really favorable to the parties and to the region moving forward. So I think that's a good thing. I would just point out there is some fatigue in our nation here with our engagement in the Middle East, and whether it's in Afghanistan or Iraq or Syria or other things like this. These have been a heavy toll on the American people, and this was a very significant action. And the president took an extraordinary amount of risk with this, political risk as well as military and strategic risk with it. And the outcomes weren't completely certain on the other side of this. So that it is moved in the right direction, I think, is very fortuitous, and that's good. But I think what you probably heard was people concerned about the risk of, what happens on the other side of this. Are we now engaged in another long-term conflict? Do we know what's going to happen? It seems to be going in the right direction, but I don't know that was all that certain, or late last week or in the early hours after our strike.
Okay, so the military aspect of things is sort of to one side. It seems, as we've been saying, the ceasefire is holding. Now turning to sort of the diplomatic chapter of this conflict. I mean, are we hearing the sorts of noises from Tehran, the signals that you're hearing from Tehran? Are they telling you that the leadership in Tehran is willing to engage diplomatically and to try to move on?
I think there's been some indications of that. My understanding was this morning the Iranian president indicated that they are ready to move forward. There's also been some of the normal rhetoric that we would expect from the Iranians, them claiming victory in this, and expounding on some of their previous ideological views here in terms of this. So I think some of that is to be expected, but I think there has been some overtures in this, and I do think the Iranians have an appreciation, whether they are expressing it publicly or not, that they have been severely affected here over the last week, and many of their goals have been set back in significant ways. So yeah, I think there is some. I think it'll take some time. I think this is going to be it's going to be really important for the United States and for other interlocutors in the region and outside of the region to really kind of come together and in kind of a full court press, try to get the parties together and begin what I think will be a very difficult discussion and negotiation process moving forward. But yeah, I think there is some of that, and certainly there will be some political ramifications of this as well. And after some of the previous blow-ups in Iran, we've seen them come back and go after people, go after alleged spies and others. I think some of that is taking place. That will not be good internally to Iran, but that's part of the makeup of all of this, I believe.
And what about on the Israeli side? Obviously, we've heard the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declaring victory after that 12-day war. But do you think when it comes to diplomacy, and obviously Israel will go into any diplomatic engagement feeling like it has the upper hand, I'm assuming, if they've claimed victory, do you think they want to engage with the leadership in Iran?
I don't know. I really can't speak for the government of Israel. I think they will look to the United States to play kind of a leading, perhaps initial leading role in terms of these discussions and getting people to the table and having meaningful discussions about the kind of the big issues. I think what will be important is the Israelis clearly will try to highlight the things that are most important to them, which would be a renunciation of previous dialogue coming from the Iranians directed at the Israeli state and its existence. I think that'll be important to get reversed, and then of course their acknowledgement that they're not going to seek a nuclear weapons program. I think those will all be very important. I think that's what I think is so important about the discussion. There's going to have to be some parsing of the big issues that have to be discussed in this, and that's going to take a little bit of time in this, and whether the Israelis are directly engaged or not, I do think they will rely on the United States and perhaps some other partners to maybe take the lead in this, and then at the appropriate time become part of the discussions. I think they have to be. I think all parties have to be involved in this.
Just as a wrap up this conversation, General Votel, I mean, there have been Israeli strikes that have hit the nuclear targets and US strikes that have hit the nuclear targets. There have been various military targets that have been hit. We've seen scientists, significant military figures being killed by the Israelis. I mean, to what extent do you think the Iranian leadership has been weakened? Or perhaps do you think, as some people do, this has all had the opposite effect? It's got people rallying around the flag there in Iran. Which one is it?
Well, I think there's probably a little bit of nationalism going on and people rallying around this, but I think the bigger sentiment is that the supreme leader is more isolated today than he was previously. Many of the key leaders around him have been removed by the Israelis. He is old, he is sick. They are in the process of selecting replacements for him, here in the future, and they are disconnected. They have largely been off the grid here for fear of being targeted by the Israelis. So, I think their leadership capacity, I think, has been undermined significantly in the last few days. And so I do think there is a significant amount of isolation that has taken place, particularly around the supreme leader. And I think it will probably force, hopefully, some kind of recognition and some kind of discussion within the Iranian elite here about what form their government takes going forward here. I don't necessarily think there'll be a change. I think there'll probably be a next supreme leader, but who that person is and the direction that they go, I think will be a very good indication of what the next few years or decades are going to look like in Iran. So I think there's a lot of internal reflection that has to take place here as they come out of this brief, but I think very devastating war that they've had with both the United States and Israel.
All right. Well, thank you very much indeed. We really appreciate your time and your analysis. General Joseph Votel,
Thank you. Good to be
former
with you.
commander of US Central Command. Thank you very much indeed for your time, sir.